Hi everyone, my name is Gabriel and this is the Hour of the Raven, your channel for everything Ravenloft, RPG, Dungeons and Dragons, and horror. Today, we are going to look at the history of Kartakass, where the horrors of the past take the form of myth, legend, and song. Are you ready? So listen carefully to the songs of the past, and help us to unveil the truth behind the bard's exaggerations, lies, and poetry. Hour of the Raven. To the population of Kartakass, there is no difference between myth, legend, and facts, and their past history is recorded only through songs, poetry, and tales. Nor is the present history an object of any record, and facts are often lost amid rumors and gossip. These insecure and fluid records of events can be frustrating for those who want to unravel their past, but it's commonly accepted by the people of Kartakass. In the words of the Scout's Meistersinger Lucas, why does history matter? What is done is done. Once a deed slips into the past, it affects us today only in the way that it is remembered. Events that never happened continue to shape us today, and many events that did happen have long since been forgotten. What power has fact in the face of significance? Thus, the reports gathered here are an attempt to shed some light on the countless tales, music, and poetry that make up the culture of the people of Kartakass. The legends and myths of Kartakass go back to the time of the world creation, when one day the mist covering the world dissipated and the sun shone on the great primeval forest, where the great beast of the past lived. The grandfather wolf was the king of these forests, and all creatures owed him fear and respect. His main hunting target was the grandfather boar, who was always trying to escape from his fangs. One day, however, the grandfather wolf found a clearing in the forest, and there he discovered humans, who lived planting the soil, herding other animals, and cutting down the forest. The humans of this remote past lived in harmony with nature, and learned the sounds of animals and the elements, turning them into music. With their gift of music, they were left alone by most of nature's beasts. The relationship between the grandfather wolf and the humans soon turned into enmity, as the humans dared to enter his forest to hunt and dispute his prey. All this remote past is lost in legends, and it's not possible to specify any date or historical value to such a myth. The closest event that can be traced in history dates back approximately 250 years ago, and reports indicate that the region was invaded by an army from a nearby kingdom, which conquered the region and enslaved the native people of Kartakass. The unreliable sources of Kartakass point to the kingdom of Invidia as responsible for such military occupation, and call this period the Invidian occupation. Such reports, however, are not entirely reliable, and there is no evidence to ascertain whether both of these domains came from the same location on the material plane, or whether the identity of these invaders was an elaborate creation and lie of the songs and tales of Kartakass bards. The period of the invasion was marked by the oppression and enslavement of the native people of Kartakass. These invaders were the ones who built the great walls and defenses that surround the cities of Skald and Harmonia. The center of power of these invaders was Fort Darkshot in the center of Skald. The invasion and occupation ended in 613 of the Barovian calendar. Interestingly, in the same year that Kartakass emerged from the mists into the demiplane of Dread. Tales report that the dominant forces of Invidia had captured a traveling minstrel who roamed the region, spreading insidious words of rebellion. The bard, called Lucas, was imprisoned and sentenced to death. However, on the day scheduled for his public execution, they allowed him to say his last words. Rather than pleading for his life, the minstrel delivered a furious speech, and his words were so powerful that they drove the population into revolt. The insurgency was so sudden and violent that the colonizing forces were defeated and massacred, and Fort Darkshot was burned that night. The flames of rebellion and revolution spread through the region, and soon the invaders had to withdraw from Kartakass. Despite the violence and brutality of these events, the figure of Harkon Lucas became a mythical hero of the liberation of Kartakass, and will return to appear throughout the history of Kartakass. Many speculate that several different bards have assumed the name and identity of this hero over the years, as a theatrical persona, as would be the case of the current Meistersinger of Skald. Other more sinister rumors tells that Harkon Lucas is immortal, and that he is now over 200 years old. Kartakass emerged in the Land of the Mists, having as neighbors the kingdom of Gundarak to the north, and Forlorn and Bloodspur to the east. The configuration of its neighbors will change in the future, with the emergence of the kingdom of Sithicus, and with the event of the Great Conjunction, Bloodspur disappeared into the mists, and Hazlan was displaced to its borders. None of its neighborhood kingdoms was interested in the extensive forests and small towns of Kartakass. For a century, the kingdom passed without major events, and the recently liberated population consolidated their culture and customs. The religion of the ancestral choir had a brief resurgence in the region, and even today it has a temple maintained by a few followers. This situation of isolation will be interrupted by the advances of the kingdom of Falkovnia. After a disastrous campaign to invade Darkon, King Vlad Drakov ordered the establishment of several commercial warehouses in various regions of the continent, designating an emissary for Kartakass. In the year 709, the Falkovnians, taking advantage of the lack of government in the region, tried to build a fort with a wooden palisade on the Crimson Road, intending to control the passage and entry of trade in the region. However, shortly after the fort was built, a door was left open overnight, and the place was invaded by wolves, who murdered and devoured the valiant Falkovnian soldiers during their night. After these events, Vlad Drakov, at least for now, had given up any attempt to conquer the distant lands of Kartakass. A second attempt to conquer these lands would take place again in 736 in what became known as the Gundarakite Conspiracy. The events surrounding this conspiracy have not yet been fully clarified, but rumors suggest that a nobleman of Gundarak, known as Dr. Dominiani, plotted to obtain a powerful artifact called the Crown of Dagon, capable of creating an army of globinoid creatures to conquer Kartakass and also Gundarak. This nobleman will have seduced a young girl from Skald named Akriel, a possible illegitimate daughter of the bard Harkon Lucas, who is currently Skald Meistersinger, and he planned to assassinate the bard, a very popular and influential figure in Kartakass at that time. The Gundarakite conspiracy was avoided in Kartakass thanks to the influence of a group of heroes who thwarted the conspirators' plans. The repercussions of this event, however, would still be felt in Gundarak, since Dr. Dominiani was supposed to have been directly involved in the events, the assassination of Duke Gundar a few years later. The city of Harmonia has also experienced some troubled events in the recent past. The Meistersinger of Harmonia, Zon Kleos, was already in power for 20 years when in 737 his position was challenged by a masked bard who presented himself with the name of Sundered Heart. The contestant had a beautiful voice and reached the last stage of the annual competition for the title of Meistersinger. But the masked bard was suddenly speechless during his last presentation, and Cleos was kept in power as the Meistersinger of Harmonia. In that same night, an orphanage in the city was mysteriously set on fire. A week later, while Meistersinger Cleos was addressing the population in the amphitheater, the masked bard returned and accused Cleos of a list of crimes, including the murder of his mother and the orphanage burning. The Sundered Heart bard was an orphan named Casimir, and his accusation led Cleos to lose control and become a lupine beast. Casimir chased Cleos to a tavern known as the Crystal Club, where he single-handed killed the monster. Accusing Cleos of being a werewolf, Casimir, the second place in the annual competition, became the new Meistersinger of Harmonia. During his short period as Meistersinger, he tried to re-establish the ancestral choir religious temple. However, in the same year he took office, he ended up being exposed as another lycanthrope. Although most believed that he was infected during the battle with Cleos, the population hunted him down, and he had to flee from the city. Casimir's fate after his escape is uncertain, and some claim he was murdered. Shortly after his death, Taurus, a young friend of Casimir who had taken over the leadership of the ancestral choir temple, committed suicide by jumping off a cliff. His last words before he died were, "The angels have fangs." In the recent history of Skald, the Meistersinger was a bard named Luther Benderick, who ruled uncontested in the years between 733 and 743 of the Barovian calendar. Many claim that he won the position of Meistersinger with the support of the famous bard Hakon Lucas, but that he resented being a puppet of his mentor. In the year 742, he composed a controversial ballad named the Soloist Growl. In this ballad, sung like an opera, the old grandfather wolf decides to live among men, but is corrupted by their thirst for power. His corruption is spread through his children. His daughter allies with a dead man to kill and usurp his father's power, but fails. In the next act, the grandfather wolf uses his influence to achieve for his male son a position of power, but his son uses his new powers and resources to try to destroy his father. Although the ballad did not name the characters, it was clear that it pointed out that the grandfather wolf was Hakon Lucas, and his sons were Akriel and Casimir, implying that they were all Narulf, the trickster wolves, and involved in the tragic events of the recent past. This provocation spread, and the bard Hakon Lucas decided to take action. In the 743 annual contest for Meistersinger, he participated as a candidate and won the title of Meistersinger of Skald. Humiliated, Luther withdrew from public life and was not seen since then, his fate being uncertain. Hakon Lucas, the popular bard of Skald, took over the government as the new Meistersinger of Skald, but seems dissatisfied with his position and obligations, maintaining the position only as a defense of his territory and popularity. With that, we finish our report on the rumors and legends that present themselves as history of Kartakass. What do the ancient forests of Kartakass hide? What dark rumors and secrets are known only to the most influential and powerful Meistersingers? Join us and discover these secrets. Subscribe to this channel and activate the notifications as we will enter the Kartakass Inn to chat with the famous bard and Meistersinger of Skald, Archon Lucas, about the secrets of Kartakass.